Welcome back to World Building Films, where we analyze the world settings and rules of films and TV shows to see if they work, if they don't, and if not, how they could be improved to enhance their stories. And we're finally here at part 3 of reviewing the world building of James Cameron's Avatar. We first talked about how the moon of Pandora works, and then how the Na'vi brains work, the links to which you can find above in the corner or in the description below. And speaking of which, if you want other big brainy aspects, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and keep this all going because there's a lot of great food for thought here. Alright, enough wasting time. Let's dive right back into it, starting with humans. That's right. We talked a lot about how Pandora works, but we really haven't touched upon the literal other half of this entire franchise, and that is humans. It's stated that all of this is set approximately in the year 2154, where humans have discovered several decades earlier of the existence of Pandora, and have spent all this time traveling light years back and forth to try to interact with the Na'vi, mostly for study purposes through the RDA, and eventually to start the resource exploitation plot. Then, after the Battle of Pandora, humans went back to Earth and returned about 15 years later to continue the job. And frankly, plot hole-riddled manners, but we'll get to that. The most notable feature for them, however, is none other than the infamous Avatar program, where humans managed to find a way to merge human and Na'vi DNA so that they can mentally pilot these frankly very expensive bodies and interact and study the Na'vi over time. Now, really think about the implications of all of this. First, humans can grow full organic bodies within the span of a few years that are a perfect fusion of human and alien DNA. How insanely advanced are we? Second, in this future, we're able to travel over 4 light years in distance without many issues. Yes, it's true that we had to take into account the age and time differences that come with interstellar travel, and I'm sure there's plenty of social implications for that. But while this is about a century and a half in the future for us, I think the fact that humans can achieve that in the future at all with relative ease is still a really big implication. We'd have to be able to harness incredibly powerful sources of energy like, I don't know, the sun in order to do this on such a vast scale. And if we can travel so far that easily, I'm pretty sure we should be able to conquer other planets like it's nothing. Like, screw Pandora, here in our solar system we have moons like Europa and that, which would be perfectly good candidates that are a lot closer, and, I'd imagine, don't have any other life forms or civilizations or whatever to block the way. Yet, while the films say that Earth is screwed and we consumed all our resources, these other planets are never mentioned. So what gives? Well, yeah. First off, if we want humans to be really desperate, we should take into account these 2 other moons right at our doorstep first, and say that humans are expanding so much that even those resources are disappearing, along with anything we could have found even on Mars or whatever. But even not counting that, we still have the same issue. That if humans can do so much by that point, Pandora wouldn't have stood a chance. There's even other ways humans and their decisions don't make sense. Like how in Way of Water, when they return after 15 years, they land on Pandora by using the thrusters that they use to slow down from hyperspace, and burn a huge chunk of the forest like it's nothing. Wasn't the whole point of Pandora that it's so hard to get through, and yet they could have just done that all along? But even then, assuming the RDA used to care about the Na'vi and now they're out of to give, don't they have any other method of landing that don't require deceleration thrusters? You know, the ones you're gonna want to save to return to Earth safely, lest you pass it and keep light speeding forever. And frankly, there's a whole bunch of other issues that are presented and yet never addressed. Like, how about the fact that they now have technology that can scan your brain and read your mind, meaning they could have just scanned the Na'vi's brains for information, and also make privacy for even humans officially out the window with all of its implications. Or how about in the 50 years they've been gone, humans now have developed these spider bots that apparently build a freaking skyscraper in a damn day, meaning they could have just easily built a whole damn metropolis on Pandora in that 1-year time jump, and frankly all the Na'vi would have been screwed within the span of a couple of years. Yeah, Forgot about those, didn't you? Jimmy, either show those from the beginning of the franchise or don't bother. Even other decisions don't make sense. Like, okay, bear with me here on this. I get it that we humans can be complete assholes at times, fine, but there are even smaller moments, like when Grace is trying to explain to Parker Selfridge how the Na'vi connections isn't just voodoo spiritualism, but actual biological science. Science that could be studied to better humanity and could frankly be even more valuable than freaking unobtainium. And yet he, the guy who really likes his money and profit, just laughs and doesn't believe the actual scientist telling them of a valuable scientific resource on an alien planet right in front of them that could easily be more valuable than their stupidly named rock.
What the hell have you people been smoking out there? They're just goddamn trees.
Again, I really know that people can be blind assholes, and this might just be my opinion, but don't you think his reaction is a bit, well, forced and artificial? That he went from someone who's, yes, an asshole, but you can reason with in certain terms, and yet suddenly doesn't see the actual tangible resource in front of him, even if it could be for further exploitation purposes. I get that this is a metaphor of big bad capitalism, but yeesh, that always felt forced to me even within context. Like, I'm not the only one who sees that, right? So yeah, as you can tell, there's a lot going on here that just doesn't make sense. And the decisions of humans just seems to flip-flop here. Ironically, it could be argued that humans have even worse world building and logic in my mind than the Na'vi, because there's a lot of things that just don't make sense in terms of what they can do and what they choose to do, regardless of how much capitalism bad metaphor you want to put into this. There's that, and then there's overstepping on your themes. So, other than just chalking it off as inconsistent writing, what can we do with this? How can we fix the humans in this story? Well, I thought about this for a long time, and then I realized, what if we don't? What I mean is, what if we keep these inconsistencies as a symptom of a much bigger problem? Because frankly, I don't see how the Na'vi could have stood a chance at all, even if we were to nerf human technology quite a fair bit. And the key to all of this, again, is in the Na'vi brains. Remember when I proposed in the previous video that the Na'vi were actually a super advanced alien species a very long time ago? But their brains couldn't process all this information, so they risked going haywire? And Ewa as an AI is the one that rewrote their entire world and gave them this extra lobe to help them process their knowledge and their emotions? Well, what if in the meantime, a similar thing was happening to humans? We also spend most of our history as simple tribes or farmers or whatever, as again mentioned before, and as we developed technologically speaking and were able to share and process more information more easily, we also had this hardware and software incompatibility, making us unable to process the high demanding information of our modern day and age. Now, small tangent here, so bear with me. There's an opportunity here to transcend into a much wider moral debate here because, honestly, we kinda are facing this already in our daily lives. We have the same physical brain that a farmer would have had 200 years ago, able to contain only a certain amount of information without any consequences. But now, in our current day and age, we are bombarded with constant information left and right, even if only in small drops, without ever having the time to properly process any of it. Especially with things like, yes, social media. If you think about it, it's like eating one potato chip every few seconds or so, every day of your life, without ever having a proper full meal or anything like that, and never being given the time to properly digest anything. I love having an excuse to do this right now. And because of this, I personally think that's why so many of us are burdened with so much stress, depression, anxiety, and more, even at really early stages in our lives. And sure, we're all much more collectively aware of ourselves now, and that's an objectively good thing. but it still came at a price. We are that 90s computer overheating because we're trying to run a modern day software that we were never meant to run. Seriously, there's so many studies coming out about this topic. Try actually going for like 1 week without any form of social media or whatever, much less a month. And I mean seriously commit and see how you feel afterwards. You know it, I know it, we all know it. For all of its benefits, and despite the fact that there are objectively terrible things happening in the world, we might have just literally never have been built for it. Now, take that notion and extend it to the future. What if we don't stop? What if we go for like another 150 years continuing like this, always learning, but completely forgetting how to actually stop and process all of these informations and especially these emotions, and not knowing anymore how to deal with any of this? What would happen is that, frankly, our future would be much more dystopic than what's shown in the actual films. So, I propose that in this timeline, either we didn't have any form of a super advanced AI at all, unlikely as that might be now, or if we did, it wouldn't take decisions that are actually best for us, but just caters to all of our desires even if they weren't the best and wisest decisions, allowing us to unknowingly indulge like this, but in exchange, rotting our emotions, to the point that it causes all of humanity to become even more depressed, anxious, stressed, imbalanced, inconsistent, bipolar, crazy, or whatever. Humans would have basically have become walking intelligent zombies, able to create many advanced things, but so emotionally deformed that we don't even know how or why we're using them anymore. To the point that that emotional rot influences even our reasoning. So, we'd keep making great advancements technologically speaking over time, but would become inconsistent with our decisions and even with ourselves. The only exceptions would be some scientists who would be more aware of this, and perhaps they create much more hard limitations into how much information and communication they allow themselves, which most other people wouldn't understand because they're so emotionally screwed.
The scientist stays objective.
But these scientists would know that they can't just not rely on technology. They're scientists. So there would be an even bigger divide between the two factions of humans in this future. Scientists and the rest, where tensions are absurdly high. And when they reach Pandora, it would explain even more why scientists are fighting tooth and nail to preserve all their research. At the very most, replacing their addiction to human technology and connectivity with their avatar connectivity. Everyone else in the meantime might potentially have the power to even explode planets, but they are so internally inconsistent and unstable that they even forget things. Like the fact that they don't realize how, by uploading their memories into goddamn flash drives, they can basically become immortal. Forgot about that one too, huh? Hell, if they can create a Navi-human hybrid, I'm pretty sure they can create entire human surrogates from scratch. Yet they think that repairing their bodies is the only solution they have available instead of just growing a brand new one.
Accepting. Rerouted. Backup. Data. Operation. Phoenix. Initiated.
What the hell? I axed this protocol.
Or that they could have used thrusters to gain the advantage on Pandora all along, or the fact that, in way of water, if you think about it, they freaking forgot unobtainium was a real thing and instead focused all of a sudden on goddamn whale juice because it's the shiny brand new thing. Okay, so maybe, just maybe, we could salvage this after all by using all of this as an excuse as to why humans are being such dumbasses. It's not perfect, I know, but there's at least a little nugget of something there. And sure, we don't have all the information yet until the other movies come out, but can we still have some indication of where we're headed at least? Well, I think we do, and it all leads to the final topic of these videos, and that is the Avatar program. That's right, the element that is tying these two worlds together. Humans have found a way to grow bodies that are a mix of human and Na'vi DNA, and can transfer their consciousness into them to better communicate and understand them, not to mention actually live and breathe in Pandora's environment. Yet there are still some elements that are left as a mystery. For example, why is it that Awa, this all-powerful AI that we proposed, chose Jake Sully as this special exception that had to be spared and eventually even lead the Na'vi? And also, what is the deal with Kiri? She's a Na'vi that was born out of Grace's old avatar body after Grace herself was absorbed into Awa and, technically, died. And when we see her as a teenager, she seems to have this special connection to Awa where she can hear it all around her and in some occasions even control it.
I feel her, Dad. Awa. I hear her breathing. I hear her heartbeat. She's so close. She's just there, like a word about to be spoken.
Now, again, it's still too soon to say what James Cameron has in store for her, so we'll just have to wait and see. But if we use all the concepts that we've used so far, I think I know what's actually going on. Let's start with Jake. If you recall, he technically isn't the one who was chosen to be in the Avatar program. Because these bodies are so damn complicated and expensive to make, which is fair, for all of their advancements, humans still had to deal with something completely new and literally alien to them that they never dealt with before, the RDA actually chose his twin brother Tommy, who was a scientist. Except Tommy apparently died in a knife fight, or some other random attack off screen, and since the RDA didn't want to waste a perfectly good body, they chose Jake as a replacement because their DNAs matched and he could still pilot it, even if training was required first. Now, first things first, I think there should be a little change. Instead of having Tommy die in a knife fight, I think he should already have been on Pandora, or should have at least have done a few tests with his avatar body first, and then he would die afterwards regardless of the way. Perhaps he had a sudden illness, or an accident, or whatever, it doesn't matter. So long as he died after being able to do at least one successful piloting test with his avatar body. Why? Because then we can open ourselves to the possibility that, on the very first time that they're used, avatars might have sort of an imprinting, let's say. As you know, avatars need an exact DNA match in order to be piloted. Because of this requirement, perhaps humans never had the chance to discover that once a human links to their avatar for the first time, in order to fully fit, the avatar's brain would have to mold itself to its user. But with Tommy dead and Jake taking his place, they could discover that a brand new thing has happened for the very first time. If the avatar brain is molded to fit a certain person for the first time, what happens if someone else's mind comes in? Because honestly, while I can accept that they need a DNA match to properly link, no one has ever considered that they need the same mind as well. Because even twins can have completely different lives and experiences. There are literal neural connections forming differently between one another, and that has to match too to pilot these damn things. And if it doesn't, then I think that the avatar's physical brain would have to adjust itself to make room for the imprinting of two potential consciousnesses. Sort of like a double exposure. And when the newcomer arrives, they literally have this extra room in the avatar's brain to think. Suddenly, the human mind wouldn't be that metaphorical 90s hardware, but a modern one that can operate to its fullest potential. It just doesn't have the instructions on how to do it and has to learn along the way. Now, granted, this does mean that every time Jake returns to his original human body, it would alter his own original brain too. Because since it had the chance to expand in the new extra room inside of the avatar's brain, pieces of memory and knowledge that he forms inside of the avatar body would get lost when he tries to return to his original limited human brain. Sort of like grating cheese when he leaves, with pieces remaining inside the avatar brain when he leaves, and whenever he's back in his original human body, he would start going nuts, because he would start to experience possibly memory losses or maybe even fake memories. His perception altering more and more whenever he returns because his memories are either lost or out of order, and making him desire to be inside of the avatar body more and more often because it's the only time in which he feels like he has everything put together. Sure, mind you, his legs not working would be a terrible thing to live with, but in this case, it would pale in comparison to his own mind not working. And keep in mind, this is a guy who isn't a scientist. He's a soldier. And in this future we proposed, he would already be suffering the same mental issues that all other humans would be suffering anyway. And because of this literal reprogramming that's happening in his head because of this double exposure / imprinting or whatever, Awa would notice this. It would sense that this is a very different and unique situation, where the avatar's literal brain is adapting to this new duality. And it could be like having two modern hardwares processing one single software to its fullest potential. Even allowing it to expand beyond its limits. Even way better than what Awa was able to provide for the Na'vi. Which, mind you, would still take some time. The avatar bodies aren't that malleable, but at least the instructions of these building blocks would be there. And that is why, after the events of the first film, Awa would already start to work on this and decide to create Kiri. Now, granted, the Immaculate Birth metaphor is overplayed and cheesy for us nowadays. But okay, if it has to be that, it could also be that Grace had some fun times with someone else, Na'vi or Avatar. Don't care, doesn't matter, I'll let James Cameron surprise us with that if he can. The real point is what Kiri actually is. Awa noticed that Jake and his relationship with his avatar was absolutely one of a kind, and had the potential to be replicated, but it doesn't mean that Awa had the information or building blocks of what a human is. That is, until Grace was uploaded. And while it's shown that she just didn't make it in time and kinda died, I think what might have happened is that Awa took the building blocks of Grace's consciousness, of what it meant to be an actual human being, especially one of the good ones who would be aware of what is actually damaging the minds of the rest of the imbalanced humans in the future, and did transfer her consciousness back into Grace's own avatar. Except, putting her back in the same lab-grown avatar like before would have been pretty pointless, wouldn't it? She'd be just like the others, except permanently so, and without the double exposure Jake's avatar experienced. And because of this, Awa might have taken this accidental experiment that was Jake and tried to replicate it, creating an entirely new avatar, this time born organically, that would have this psychological double exposure like Jake's is already built into it. Maybe with 5 lobes this time instead of 3 for all I care. Creating an entire hardware fusion of not one human with another, but a human with Awa, aka the entire collective consciousness of all the Na'vi. Because after so many millennia, maybe Awa started to feel that the work that it did with all the Na'vi and all of Pandora had been kind of, stagnating. That perhaps just keeping them stuck as they are was just as bad as letting them evolve out of control. And so, Jake was the blueprint to create an entire new type of building blocks for the Na'vi, where from Kiri onwards they could have had a new type of brain that, with this expanded hardware, would be able to simultaneously contain all of the Na'vi's original high intelligence, and the information of humans as well as what to learn from humans' mistake, and be able to process all of their emotions properly at the same time. The ultimate brain computer. This time without needing to always rely on Awa to store everything forever. And across the story of this world, perhaps they could evolve to also be technologically advanced once again, enough to one day have the full upper hand on humans, flipping the tables around, and make sure humans would never be powerful enough to destroy them. And who knows? If the future Na'vi would be that much more powerful technologically, and now even morally and emotionally, they could even find compassion and help humans evolve in the same way they did. I mean, really think about it. That's what's really the most frustrating thing about this franchise. Think of how it could have suddenly become so much deeper and more meaningful and powerful, where it wouldn't rely on just the nature good humans bad trope, but be a far deeper philosophical exploration of what it actually means to be an intelligent species, how to use intelligence, and a reflection of our place in our modern world. The Na'vi wouldn't have reached this point if they hadn't been exposed to these human dangers in the first place. And since they have gone through this deep, heavy journey, they could actually decide to help humans and actually give them a better organic hardware for their minds and help them realizing everything they've been doing wrong this whole time. How their psychological woes were more self-inflicted than they realized. That they actually just needed to take occasional times off to help process and digest the high demanding informations of the modern world. And with the help of this new Super Na'vi intervention, when they're ready, they'd be able to cut the umbilical cord of the addiction of modern technology in the same way that the Na'vi have cut their cord, or Q's, with Awa at last. The Great Mother allowing its great offsprings to find their own paths, now fully ready and now fully mature. I mean, at least it would make the story less cliché, Cameron, ya fuck. So, at long last, that was the temporary, at least for now, world building of James Cameron's Avatar. And yeah, this was quite the world to go through. Granted, again, this is only a temporary review because there's clearly a lot of incomplete information out there, but I still wanted to give this a try and will give further updates when we have the full picture, regardless of how long that takes. Because, frankly, this world is so close to being complete and making sense. I can feel it, it's right there waiting for a better exploration and explanation. But I guess we'll just have to wait for now. Credit where credit is due though, the world building of this franchise is still more thought out than most others, especially for the time it was actually conceived and first shot, and Cameron has proven in the past that he has the potential of creating groundbreaking stories when he wants to. So fingers crossed that whatever Cameron does have in store for us will not only fix the complaints we've had so far, but also improve on what are at least so far some pretty decent roots. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. What do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I talking out of my ass? Maybe. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. Join my Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And if there's any other franchise whose world building you'd like analyzed, let me know. Until next time, keep building worlds.